Discover Help presents Stress-Free Living with Ray Samich and Mr. Stress-Free, Ratanjit S. Sandhi. This audio program is an unscripted and unrehearsed conversation between Ray and Ratanjit. It is shared with you in hope of adding value to your life. We encourage you to listen to this program in its entirety to receive the full impact of its message. Sit back, relax, open your heart, mind, and soul to this edition of Stress-Free Living.
Welcome to Stress-Free Living. So good to be with you. We want to thank you for joining us on today's program. I'm Ray Samich, and I would first like to introduce you, as always, to my very dear longtime radio colleague and dear friend and brother, Ratanjit Sandhi. Ratanjit, how are you today?
Wonderful, Ray. How are you?
Excellent, thank you. So glad that we are back live today for our regular listeners and viewers. We know that you are maybe aware that we have not been with you for the last few weeks. So today our schedule's aligned, our health is in good shape, and all of us are here with you. And we are glad that you are on the other side of your radio or internet or monitor, whatever, and however you are able to catch us. Speaking of that, before we start, we want to let you know that, as always, this program will be recorded and will be put onto our YouTube channel, which is Stress-Free Living Radio. Stress-Free Living Radio. If you do a search on that, you will find many, many programs, close to 100 shows that we have put up there online. And one of these days, we're going to go into the archives and take some of the other hundreds of them and also place them up there on that website so that you can really choose from a variety of different topics on trying to reduce your stress in your life. And if you share these with others, how we can maybe approach topics differently and reduce some of the stress in those you love. Ratanjit, that is a perfect segue, because as we were thinking about what show to do today live after being off for a few weeks, I just looked around me, talked with some people that I work with, that I hang out with. Everybody is talking about the economics. Everybody is worried about where we are, where we're going to go, how bad it's going to get, how bad it already is. And then we worry about why it happened, how it happened, who's to blame, what should we do with the situation. We're worried about ourselves, we're worried about our children and our families, we're worried about friends across the country, we're about people that we don't even know around the world, because we're hearing reports of this happening and that happening. This is stress-free living, and boy, we are living in an era of stress when it comes to our finances and the economics of our world. So it caused me to ask the question, is it something that we should really worry about to the point of our own health? Is it something that we should be as stressed about as we are? Because we always talk on this show, you always tell us worrying about the future doesn't accomplish anything. It isn't a productive state to be in, worrying for the future. And that's what we're really talking about. We're all worried about the future. How do we cope with this? And if we need to worry about some, what should we worry about and what should we not worry about?
You know, basically, in life, I mentioned, if you look at life, we have we can divide our thinking or action in 4 quadrants. You know, in the first quadrant, what is urgent and what is important. Okay, second quadrant, what is important but not urgent. And third quadrant is not important but urgent. And fourth quadrant, not urgent or not important.
Right.
So where do we spend most of our time? First,
urgent, not important.
Yeah, you spend time on internet or phone or play these things, and when you check the mail, you go through all the mail, including the junk mail, which is not important, not urgent, So, and we basically draws our attention. Our attention is drawn by what is urgent and important. When your house catches fire, which is urgent and important. If the economy goes into doldrums, it is urgent and important. And when your health, we don't worry about it until a pain or ache or something draws our attention. It becomes urgent and important. But we hardly spend our time on an area which is important but not urgent. So when we spend most of our time in important, but it hasn't become urgent yet, so we can avoid the urgency. We can avoid the stress. We can avoid the urgency of, if you maintain your health, if you eat the right food, do the right exercise, which is important, but not just urgent. So you're less likely to fall sick. And of course, so that's what has happened to our economy. So most of our decision makers, they don't react until it becomes urgent and important. And when it becomes urgent and important, then many times it is gone too far and it takes a while for it to correct. So that is one aspect of our life. Ray, you have a comment?
Yeah, I do. What a lot of our listeners don't know is that you used to do for companies, corporate training and things, where you would help them to figure out what is urgent and what is important on a daily basis for business executives. And you put one of the companies that I was involved with then many years ago, you put us through that training. And so that's why I knew those quadrants, and I've been associated with that, because we tend to just look at the things that are urgent coming across our desk or coming across our life, and we don't even think if they're important or not, but they're urgent because they're immediately in front of us. So I knew that answer, and I've always been now, ever since you spent time with us on that, try to say before I do anything, it may be urgent, but before I actually spend even a minute on it, is it important? Is it something that's going to make a difference? Because there's so many urgencies, like you mentioned, email right now. I get hundreds of emails a day, hundreds of them. And I know people who get thousands of them. And if we spent just the time just looking at emails, most of which are not anywhere important at all, we would lose our whole day just opening emails and reading them. So, it's the old mail system. I mean, if we used to get 20 letters in a day, that was a big day. But I mean, you can get, again, 1,000 emails. So it's just insane. But move that over to what you just talked about in terms of the government and the whole world. The whole structure is supposed to be to avoid urgency, because you do things in a timely manner. I mean, that's the way any huge corporation is supposed to operate. And certainly the government is, in many ways, the biggest corporation of all. So I think there's other factors in play besides what you mentioned, because they know what to do. They know how to avoid urgency. The system is in place to fix things before they break. And yet that wasn't done. And that gets into the political side of this, because there's some things that we just can't control as residents, as citizens of the country. And it's not just America, it's many other countries that are going through this, most of them. it's our hands are tied as an individual. We don't control what's being done in government. So does that mean we should worry about it more because we don't have any control? Or should we be able to focus and say, I can't change it anyway. What I think isn't probably going to happen. And I'm not responsible for it breaking. I'm not able to fix it. So is our best approach just to kind of ignore it, live within our own household and just try to forget who else was responsible and why it happened and how it happened and just pay attention to me and my family?
Well, the thing is, in a democratic system, all of us are involved. The moment you get less involved and leave it to others, they will end up making decision which is not in according to what is right for you. So we have to be involved. Basically, right now in our country, there are people who basically don't even know the name of the president. They don't even understand how the political system works. What is congressman? What is senator? What are the laws? So only few people, when they get involved in active things, and mostly these people who are power hungry, who become our elected officials, they have an agenda. So they are going to constantly follow that agenda in basically sacrificing the safety and the right things to do. So it is very important for all of us to be involved. That is number one. Basically, to understand this economy, we have to go to the fundamental of economy, how it all started. So initially, there was no, when we started the human race, we basically did not have the currency or the money or the wealth. Basically, when we were bartering one product for other, so that limits us. So eventually, we created a currency which becomes something which I can get a currency out of a product and then buy whatever I need. So this currency originally started with something worthwhile, which is gold or silver or something. So it again limited us. So eventually we created a note. A government is guaranteeing that this note is worth this much, and they are backing it up with reserve of gold or silver or something expensive. So that is how the system was working. So now, later on, when one of our president, Nixon, he changed the whole thing. Instead of gold as a backup, he basically removed that. So suddenly the currency basically became based on the strength of our government. So suddenly today, we are into a situation where our government is freely printing the currency without any backup. So in one sense, this currency has no value. Mm-hmm. It is all based on our faith in the government. And if you look at the government, we are the most indebted government in the whole world. We have close to $100 trillion in debts. And we are printing the currency. So our economy is a paper economy. It has no value. It is all depends on our faith. Once you lose the faith, that's what happened to this bank who failed. The investor lost the faith and they wanted to get the monies. Everybody wanted to withdraw the money. So suddenly bank did not have all the money available. Bank failed. So the economy would eventually fail if you all become panic. Today, it is.
Oh, yeah. Well, you're not helping me to be less stressed, though, Ratanjit. I just want to let you know that everything you've just talked about is exactly the issue. The more you become educated, and for our listeners, maybe many of you are involved in businesses, you're involved in finance, and you're well aware of what Ratanjit is talking about. Maybe perhaps some of you are not. I mean, if you look at the percentages of money that is out there compared to the amount of silver and gold that are there, you are absolutely right. The paper itself in America has very, very little value. And it's not, and with inflation, it's reducing pretty much every single day in value. If you really look at the numbers for banks, they only have to have 8% of reserves for all the money that they loan out. And so they can, just because the banks that failed maybe had $200 million in assets, but based on that, they can give out 10 times that much in loans to other people because they only have to have an 8% reserve. And so there's different numbers out there. The more you hear them, the more you understand them, the more nervous you get, the more worried you get about what's happening. So you've exemplified the point enough, okay? What do we do, Ratanjit? Do we know all this information and try to ignore it? We can't change it. Okay. I know you said we have to be active in our communities and with our government and with the, in the republic that we are, there are elected officials to represent us and to act according to our will, to our wishes, but we know that doesn't happen. Okay. We know that, just because we all think some way doesn't mean our representatives are going to act that way. So it can become very stressful. And in these downtimes, we become very worried about it. We're going to take a short break. And when we come back, I need to ask you, Ratanjit, you always have the answers. Do we have an answer for this one today? Or is this going to be the one that we've met our match, that, there really isn't a solution because there's so much trouble, it's beyond our ability to fix it? Have we become so urgent that this is out of control? We're going to let you think about that and answer when we come back. This is Stress-Free Living. We're trying. The whole idea here is to reduce our stress. So far, I'm a little more stressed than I was when I started. Hopefully, we'll get that fixed. We'll be right back.
Okay.
All right. Any input from any of our great Zoom guests?
I think this is Ken. The major issue that we are talking about is not easy to understand it in 5 minutes or even 1 hour. Economy is a very complex subject. But Ratanjit is trying is explain the basic origin of inflation, how the gold was the currency, and when everybody started producing more gold in California, the gold rush times, the gold became quite a bit and everything became inflationary. More currency you have according to or based on the GDP, the inflation would occur, and the same thing is happening here now. The notes are more, the currency in paper is more because of printing, and the GDP is not keeping up with it. This is not an easy concept. So I guess, Ratanjit, help me out. I think the major issue would be in this economy, instead of getting stressed, is get educated more, understand the basic principles of economy. And one of the best resources that's available on YouTube is the Milton, what was his name? The economist, Milton Bradley? Or do you know what I'm talking about? The famous economist.
Milton somebody. Yeah.
Milton.
Not Milton Bradley. He was the game guy.
Right, no, the Milton
Yeah,
somebody.
but Milton, you're
but
right.
Anyway,
Is it John Milton? Was it John Milton?
Yeah, I think I can look it up while the show is going on, but it's understanding and acquiring a knowledge would be the one that I would recommend, reducing the stress. Ratanjit, help me out, or I'm sure you have more ideas.
Milton Friedman. That's the name you're looking for.
Yeah, Milton Friedman. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. He passed away.
Yes, he did. He was a brilliant in explaining the basic fundamentals of economy. It's very complex. I think the only answer I have is knowledge.
That's good input. We'll ask if that's part of it, or does more knowledge make us even more nervous? I don't know. And anybody else, Doug or Kim, anything real quick? I think we have a few seconds left.
You know what? I don't have anything right now. I'm just anxious to hear Ratanjit's solution to this.
I'm listening to learn today. In my mind,
Okay, we're coming back. We are back on Stress Free Living. Thank you so much for joining us. Ratanjit Sandhi, yours truly, Ray Samich, with you, talking about an extremely complicated subject. And we are not economists, and we're, although Ratanjit is brilliant and has all these degrees and all this world knowledge and everything else, but this is one area here that I think even the most trained, brilliant economists are really scratching their heads right now. And we supposedly have those brains right now in Washington and in other places around the world that are trying to fix it. And it's a very, very, very slow recovery. And some of the moves have not worked that these most brilliant people have said. So I want to be clear to say, this is not a show that's about the economy, only from the perspective of saying, how do we as individuals cope with what's happening? How do we address it in our own head, in our own heart? And how do we address it with those around us so that we can cope with it in a less stress situation? Ratanjit, during one of the breaks there, one of our great guests said, is it about education? You started giving us a history, which was very informative. A lot of people probably didn't know that. We can find out a lot more history. It's available to us in terms of the flow of how the economy developed and where over the years, over the centuries, where it's gone bad, where it's gone well, how we got to where we got today. Is that important? Do you think that is something we need to do and understand it? Does that help us cope with it and be less stressed?
Well, education is a continuous thing, and we need to definitely get more educated, more concerned. But before we solve this whole puzzle, which we are not going to solve this in such a small time, we are not expert. We only want to plant some question in everybody's mind. And if they can answer those questions, they'll feel less stress. So before we do that, we have to understand what is wealth. So wealth is, it can be currency, dollar, or whatever it is, or it can be gold or diamond or possessions. It can be land, it can be your business, it can be your title, which you can convert into your currency, and awards, degree, experience, your capabilities, your abilities, your family wealth, family history, many times can be transformed into wealth, your intelligence, your and then there are soft things which are your intelligence, your value system, your personal integrity, your reputation. And then there is what I call as the real wealth. So until you recognize the real wealth and you have the real wealth within you, in your possession, all the transitory wealth comes and goes and devaluates and goes up and goes down, and that only you end up managing that. But you are not completely dependent on that from the standpoint of your tension, your stress, and all that, if you have the real wealth. So it is important to realize that until you recognize the real wealth and focus on the real wealth, a lot of people say your health is wealth. You know, nothing else matters, only your health matters. Your health is, again, based on your thought process. If you worry and make yourself sick, you will lose the health. So if you don't have the right thought process, you cannot have the right wealth. So ultimately, your real wealth is your clear thinking, your understanding of the rules and regulation, understanding of your real values which you have, understanding of your operating values, understanding of the freedom, understanding of all these things combined together becomes your real wealth. And most importantly, understanding what you are, who you are, what you are. So until that thing doesn't come into play, your misunderstanding of you is going to cause you stress. So ultimately, it is all about the real wealth. So Ray, you have any comments before I go further?
I like the shift of direction here, because I think we could get bogged down so much in talking about the world economy and the United States economy and all those things. So talking about wealth is I really enjoy that. And if we're talking about wealth, defining what real wealth is, I thought you were going to go with humanity. I thought you were going to talk about our wealth in terms of our relationships, our family, if we're blessed to have a family, if not, our extended family that we have, if we don't have a blood family of sorts. I thought that's what you were going to define as real wealth. I was waiting to hear what you meant by that. So I'm intrigued, but I'm also a little surprised that that's not what real wealth is. So I'm anxious to hear what you mean by the understanding. I would try to listen to the words, but I definitely need to hear more about it and more clearly defined. Are you saying it's the wealth that we have is our ability to do things, our ability to understand our position and go from there, our ability to assess the world and assess our place in it and move from there? Is that what you mean by real wealth? What are you defining real wealth as?
Real wealth is understand. See, once you have talent, you can, or education and all that. So it can be converted into money. It can be converted into, you can sell your experience, your abilities and all that. But to understand that you have an entity in you which can be educated, which can have unlimited possibility of experience and talent. So understanding that itself is your coming close to real wealth. So basically, you are here temporarily for a short period of time. Although it appears 100 years or 80 years or 90 years, it is a long time, but life passes very quickly. And we all who are born is eventually going to die. So we are here for a very short time. So wealth basically is a resource for us to do something which we enjoy, which we actually basically give us the joy. So in our life, what happens is when you have a successful business, there are three kinds of ways to create wealth. Once you have a business, an idea which you can convert into sellable goods, whether it is in a service or product, so it can give you wealth. But that is a not sustainable wealth. So there is another type of wealth that you are an artist, you are a musician, you like to create things, you are very good at that. So you basically focus on that, but that doesn't convert into money. So we have history, Ben Gay, whose paintings are sold for millions of dollars, but he starved to death when he was alive. So he could not convert that gift into money. So third type of is when you enjoy what you're doing, and that is idea or talent is converted into wealth. Steve Jobs, he loved computer, he loved these technical things, but he was able to convert into wealth. So that gives you a formula of sustainable wealth. Excuse me. So until you find something which you enjoy, and also it is able to find a market, you don't have the formula of sustainable wealth. So that gives you a window into sustainability, into wealth. So this economy is going to go up and down based on the greed and fear and those things which are behind these. And ultimately, we have to make sure on one side, then we elect our leaders which are not totally embedded into immediate short-term gains, but they are in the best interest of the public, and they are in the best interest of the longevity of our nation, of our humanity. And on the other side, personally, we have to find something within us, uniqueness within us, which we can polish and eventually convert into adding value, which is going to be converted into wealth. So we have our inner real wealth within us, which is our uniqueness to create a new value to the surroundings, to the public, to everyone around us. It is not only limited to basically now there is one aspect of all of us which can allow us to tap into that joy which really helps our inner soul or inner heart to feel elated about it. It's not the talent of art, it's not the talent of music, it's not talent of computers, it's not talent of this in any of these things. There's something more than that. Once we understand that thing, we are part into an area which whatever we do, whatever our talents allow us to do, uniqueness allow us to do, we begin to enjoy this. We begin to feel joy in it. And we have sustainability. And they say, what you enjoy, it never feels like work. You work tirelessly and you ultimately attain success, which can be converted into wealth. So our system is encouraging professions and talents which are only making money. So there are so many people parked into jobs which they hate, but because that gives them money, they stay there. And as a consequence, we are producing mediocre product and we are not creating sustainable economy, right?
Wow. I have to unpack all of this, that all the brilliant things that you've just said for the last 5 minutes. I have to try to unpack this, and then we're going to go to a break. Separating ourselves, if I'm hearing you correctly, separating ourselves, let's look first at paying attention to what's on the world stage, if you will. What I think I've heard you say is that we need to be educated on that. We need to be aware of what's happening. We need to, if we elect leaders, we need to do our best to hold them accountable, which means we have to be aware of what they're doing and we have to be communicative. And if that means voting other people in, that's what we need to do. If that means calling them, voicing our opinions so that they know what we feel should be done, we need to do that. So I think I'm hearing you say, don't ignore it. Don't pretend it isn't there. You need it to take the responsibility for what's happening on the world stage and do our best to influence it. What I want to add to that, though, is that, and I'm in the media, I've been in the media for 30 years, the media can overwhelm us. It can take over our mind, and it's an industry. Media is not there to serve us. I'll be very honest with everybody, and I'm in the media. It's an industry, and they are there to serve the audience like any business does. They're there to serve their customers, but they're also there to pay the bills and make a profit. And so the 24/7 internet streams and 24/7 cable news and all of those different things can really cause us to be overwhelmed by what's happening with things like the economy. And that's not being done to help us. That's being done because that's a business, that's an industry. And if we sit there in front of the television and watch that news all day, or watch our phone reports all day of the internet streams, or just pay attention to that all the time, it'll overwhelm us and preoccupy us so much that we can't get to the second part of what I think you've heard, what I've heard you say, and that is recognize what we can do with our own wealth. And our own wealth, as I think I've heard you, I wrote down 3 things. One is that we have the ability to do what we want. We have to understand our abilities, to understand our talents, to understand our creative abilities, our intelligence. So we have that ability, which can cause great wealth because we assess what we can do and how we can do it. We are unique in terms of what we are capable of doing, what God has given us the abilities to do and the experiences to nurture what we can do. So that's truly a wealth. And then if we can find what brings us joy so that we want to continue to do what we were designed to do and experienced based to be able to fulfill, all of that can create sustainable wealth. That is what I think I heard to unpack that in terms of our path forward. Did I get most of that right? Or some of it?
Getting close, yeah.
Pretty close. Okay. What I want you to do when we come back from this quick break is to clarify the parts I got wrong, because I think we're onto something here to be able to cope with this with less stress. So we're going to further refine that and probably get to a few other questions when we come right back. This is Stress-Free Living. Please stay with us.
Thank you.
Okay, you said so much, Ratanjit. Oh my gosh, you a lot of great information there. I hope that helped summarize it. Who has a thought here for a minute or two? Kim, you were on it. We cut you off. I'll start with you if you want.
Well, it's right in alignment with what Ratanji said, which in my mind, if you can write a check to solve your problem, you don't have one. Because the real wealth is in things that money can't buy. And that's what I was thinking before we even started the discussion. And I was thinking in terms of health, relationships, and things of that nature. So I appreciate this conversation. Yeah. If I have all the money in the world and I don't have good relationships with people that I care about or I'm ill, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Thank you. Ken or Doug?
Yeah, no, I just was wondering, Ratanjit, I'm going to try to simplify with my mind. I think what you were defining wealth was accumulation of certain assets, and those assets probably were tangible and intangible. I think that's what you were trying to at least I heard you say those. And if it's be talking about those, some of it were intangible, like your mental ability to innovate, your mental ability to cope up the stress and to deal with the situations. But some of the assets were financial and maybe physical, keeping your physical health or physical work that you can do and produce some financial gains from it. But I think that there are some aspect of social, that's what you were talking about, political collection, leadership and everything. And time, I think, is also asset. So some of the assets were financial, social, mental, time, and physical. Is that, did I miss anything, Ratanjit?
Yeah, those that you can add a few here and there, but that's how we are talking. There is another asset which is we are going to talk about, which is different.
Okay, we'll come back with that in a moment. I think we're wrapping up the commercial break here. Let's see. I think the music's going to start. Yeah, we're back in a second. Welcome back to Stress-Free Living. Ray Samich with you today. And of course, Ratanjit Sandhi, trying to unpack so many different thoughts about the economy, the financial problems around us, the stress that it is causing in many of us. how much of it should we pay attention to? Do we need to? Should we ignore it? Should we try to change it? Do we just worry about ourselves and our family through these times, or do we maintain a global vision for changing the world and improving the world? And this has led us to a discussion about what is wealth and what is real wealth and what we can control within that spectrum of real wealth. Ratanjit, I tried to summarize what I thought you were leading to before the break. We've had some other great input and clarity that has come back from some of our great Zoom guests here during that last break. But it seems that there are tangible things that make up our real wealth, like our relationships, like our ability to get things done, our unique ability to do that, like our health, our physical health, mental health, that's allowing us to do it. So that's a part of real wealth, but it seems that you're defining a lot of the real wealth as being an intangible. It's something you can't touch necessarily, but it's real in that we have the ability to do things. We have the ability to understand and comprehend and realize what we can be capable of, and where that can best fit into our own life and into the lives of others and into our world. The assessment of all of that for understanding what we have that is real wealth doesn't really start with money. It hopefully can be converted into sustainable income so that we can support ourselves. But the real wealth doesn't seem to include cash, doesn't seem to include gold and silver and diamonds. It's an intangible that propels us to gain real wealth. Is that, am I right or wrong?
See, before we get to that, answering your question,
I'm going to hold you accountable to answer it, though. So don't run away from me.
you have to understand stress. Stress is a condition when your mind concludes that you cannot change it. So suddenly anything you cannot do causes stress. So anything when there are two kinds of stress. There is a deadly stress, negative stress, or all kinds of, and there is a positive stress. A positive stress makes you enable you to move and change. But that is, your mind has to know that you can change. So anytime when your mind says that you are victim of this circumstance, you cannot change, the laws you cannot change, the economy you cannot change, or this you cannot change, suddenly it will cause stress. So the other side of the coin is, we talked about exploring real wealth. So I heard family and friends are real wealth. Your intellectual property is your real wealth. So all that, there is family and friends you cannot have. You only can become a family, or you can become a friend. So thought process says, when you serve somebody unconditionally and add value to them, you like to call him your uncle, your brother, or this thing, you love them more than others because this person adds more value to you. Similarly, a friendship happens when you help somebody. So friends, when you only expect from them, do not remain friends. Friendship is only up to you to add value. Now, when I talked about using your talent and converting into money, and so look at a corporation. there are head of the departments which know more about their subject than the CEO of the company, right?
Correct.
The CEO knows less about R&D, CEO knows less about finance, CEO knows less about marketing and so on. They are expert. They are head of the department. Why she or he is a CEO? Because his focus remains on guiding the company to add the highest value to their customer, to environment. So the real wealth within us is our mindset of finding a way to add the highest value under any circumstances. That gives you your family, that gives you your friend, that gives you the money, that gives you a position in the company, that gives you, so that is something in your hand. So you, in any situation, this bad economy or poor economy, there are millions of millionaires are made in the bad economy. There are, so because they add value, they add under these circumstances, so every diversity, every drawback, every challenge, every adversity basically is an opportunity to add the highest value. So all your talent are the tools, but your real purpose, your real joy comes from adding the highest value. So once your mind is fed by that mindset, you'll always be happy. You always have control of your life. You always look for opportunity to add value, right?
That's indeed. This has flown by here today, and we are at the end of the show, which means I'm not going to hold you accountable to that last question because I don't even remember the last question I asked you. But what you came back with at the end there was so stunningly perfect, because you talked about taking, the way I interpret it, taking control, okay, being who we are supposed to be, turning that negative stress, I can't do anything, I'm messed up, the world is messed up, the economy's messed up, I am a victim, and turning that into positive stress, and then moving forward, as you said, and you're right, there's more millionaires made during bad times than there are during good times. And I'm not saying we all want to be millionaires. Maybe that's not our goal at all, but it certainly means we can do more than survive. We can function and we can even flourish if we approach that with the positive stress, meaning using as a motivator to be able to take what's in us and do the most with it. You've laid that out beautifully, and I appreciate very much your thoughts here today. I think we definitely have a part 2 of this show coming up, so we can further expand on your closing thoughts and try to put all of the things we talked about today and package it up a little bit more in terms of a how-to situation. So we'll do that next week and come back with continuation on this topic. Thank you so much for being with us. Wherever and however you're listening, we value you. Thank you so much. Ratanjit, thank you. Remember, we're all playing the same game. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Okay, we took it right to the top of the hour there, so we are clear. And if you have some thoughts already, I just told you we're going to continue this because I just didn't think we wrapped it up tight enough. But I loved your closing thoughts there, Ratanjit. I think that meant really put a whole different positive spin on something that was a little bit negative there, unfortunately, for most of the show. So I think that was a great way to take it out. Anybody have any thoughts, especially relevant to where we can take this next week? What questions you still have on this particular topic?
So here's Doug. And, of course, that is all. I just enjoyed listening to all of that. It, just opens up my mind again. But I just want to say, as a regular old guy out here in Western Colorado, my wife and I have been, how can I say it, very happy, very content. We've done a lot of great things in our life, and we're just as, I guess, within ourselves, we're just as good as what Ratanjit was talking about. But I will say, and hopefully maybe the next session we'll talk more about it, it's with the economy the way it is, it's very difficult to keep that frame of mind. It's very difficult to say, yes, everything is wonderful, we're really good. Whoa, wait a minute, we can't afford to do this or we can't afford to do that because things are just unbelievably expensive right now. So it's difficult to keep that really good, positive wealth, if you will, within yourself when you're worried about some of these other things that you basically don't feel like you can control. I just thought I'd throw that out there.
You see, what happens to us is when you lose a tooth, one teeth in your mouth, you have 32 good teeth, and where does your tongue goes? To the cavity. So we have this habit of constantly going where the worry gathers you, only the negative things. So we have to focus on the positive things which we can do something about rather than focusing on something which we cannot do anything about. So that is the only way to reduce stress, because it is by doing something which is under our control, which is eventually going to change the overall picture, rather than worrying about something which we cannot do and focusing on something which this should have been done, he should do it, he should do it. So instead of worrying about that, we should take charge of what we can do.
I hear you.
But Doug, your point is really valid, and I wrote that down for next week because it is difficult. And I think especially for those that are seniors, and some of us are in that category, and our income is fixed, for the most part. So what do we do? How do we cope with that? So we will definitely come back and include that next week. Kim or Dr. Ken, any thoughts?
No, I think for next
the
session,
shift from evaluating and judging externally to taking it back to myself, because that's something that I can control, being that wonderful friend and cultivating those relationships. So yeah, again, this was a great conversation. And it's empowering, because if I'm judging and evaluating externally, then I can fall into resignation and become apathetic. But if I know that it begins with me and what I'm generating and what I'm doing, if I'm being that in the world, then I will attract naturally all that I want. I'm feeling very wealthy right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. Hey, can I borrow some money? I'm just kidding.
no, I think his point is very well taken. That what is under my control is how can I make a positive impact in my whatever we want to do it, X, Y, Z. But if it's not under my control, nothing you can do anyhow. And there's no point in worrying it. I think that's a great ending, and that's the way it should be. That will reduce the stress. They'll give you strength to cope up any bad situation.